Cole Hargrove set down his mug and studied the two people across the dinner table. The steam from the roasted chicken rose between them, carrying the scent of rosemary and garlic through the small dining room. Outside, the Oregon pines swayed in the evening wind, their shadows dancing across the white walls. Marla smiled at him, the kind of smile that belonged in magazine advertisements for suburban happiness. Her auburn hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, and her scrubs had been replaced with a cream-colored sweater that made her look soft and approachable. She served herself a generous portion of green beans. "How was work?" she asked, tilting her head. Cole shrugged. "Finished the Hendersons' deck. They want the gazebo done by next month." "That's wonderful, honey." Marla's fork clinked against her plate. "More money coming in. We could use it." Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They'd had this conversation before. His carpentry business brought in enough. More than enough. But Marla always wanted more. He turned his attention to the third chair at the table. Empty. The plate sat untouched, the fork and knife aligned perfectly on either side. "Where's Lila?" Cole asked. Marla waved her hand in a dismissive gesture. She said she wasn't hungry. You know how children are. Picky. Cole set his fork down. In the 2 years since he'd married Marla, he'd watched the girl shrink into herself. At 9 years old, she should have been running around the neighborhood, scraping her knees, laughing too loud. Instead, she moved through the house like a ghost trying not to disturb the living. "She should eat something," Cole said. "She'll eat when she's hungry." Marla's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. "Don't spoil her, Cole. Kids manipulate when you give them too much attention." Cole pushed his chair back and stood. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor with a sharp sound that made Marla flinch. He didn't miss it. "I'll check on her," he said. "Cole." But he was already walking toward the hallway, his boots heavy against the floor. The house was too quiet. Houses with children in them should have noise, music, laughter, the thud of running feet. This house felt like a museum where everything had to stay in its place. He approached Lila's room and knocked twice. No answer. "Lila, can I come in?" Silence. Cole turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was neat to the point of sterile. The bed was made with hospital corners. The stuffed animals on the shelf sat in a perfect line. The desk held 3 pencils, all sharpened to identical points. But the room was empty. Cole frowned and turned back toward the dining room. That's when he heard it, a soft whimper from beneath the table. He crouched down and looked under the white tablecloth. Lila was there, curled into a ball, so tight she looked like she was trying to fold herself out of existence. Her blonde hair hung in front of her face, and her thin arms wrapped around her knees. "Lila," Cole said softly, "what are you doing down there?" The girl's whole body went rigid. She didn't look up. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I won't steal food again. I promise." "I'm sorry." Cole's blood went cold. He glanced at the table above them. No one had touched her plate. Nothing was missing. The girl wasn't even holding anything. "What food?" Cole asked, keeping his voice level. Lila's shoulders started shaking. "I didn't mean to. I was just hungry. I'm sorry. Please don't." Her voice cut off, replaced by a choked sob. Cole heard footsteps behind him. Marla appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. She wore that strained smile again, the one that never reached her eyes. "See what I mean?" Marla said, her tone light and dismissive. "She does this for attention. Drama. Her father taught her how to play victim." She laughed, but it sounded like glass breaking. "Just ignore her, Cole. She'll stop when she realizes it doesn't work." Cole stayed crouched by the table. He watched Lila's small frame trembling, watched the way she pressed herself against the table leg as if trying to become invisible. "Come out, Lila," Cole said quietly. "Nobody's going to hurt you." "Cole, don't encourage." I said. Cole's voice dropped to something flat and dangerous. "Nobody's going to hurt you." Marla's mouth snapped shut. Cole extended his hand under the table, palm up, not moving closer. Lila's tear-stained face finally lifted. Her blue eyes were too old for a 9-year-old, filled with a wariness that made Cole's chest tighten. After a long moment, she took his hand. Her fingers were cold and small, like a bird's bones. Cole pulled her out gently and guided her to her chair. "Sit," he said. Eat your dinner. Lila sat, but didn't move toward the food. She stared at the plate like it might bite her. Go ahead, Cole said. The girl's eyes darted to Marla, then back to the plate. May I? Lila whispered. May you what? Cole asked. May I eat? The question hung in the air like smoke. Cole looked from Lila to Marla. His wife was cutting her chicken with precise movements, as if nothing strange had just happened. You don't need to ask permission to eat, Cole said. But Lila didn't move until Marla gave a small nod. Only then did the girl pick up her fork with trembling fingers and take a tiny bite of chicken. She chewed slowly, mechanically, her eyes never leaving her plate. Cole sat down and picked up his own fork, but the food tasted like cardboard in his mouth. He watched Lila eat like someone who'd been trained to perform a task. Careful, measured, afraid of making a mistake. Something was very wrong in his house. And Cole Hargrove had spent enough years in the Marines to know when someone was operating under fear. The next morning, Cole woke before dawn. Old habits. He lay in the dark listening to Marla's breathing beside him, slow and even. He slipped out of bed without waking her and dressed in the bathroom. The house was cold. Cole made coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching the sun bleed orange across the pine trees. His mind kept circling back to the previous night. The way Lila had cowered. The way she'd asked permission to eat at her own dinner table. Cole opened the pantry to grab the sugar and stopped. A new lock had been installed on the inside door, the one that led to the extra storage space where they kept bulk items. A thick padlock hung from the latch. He stared at it for a long moment. Why would anyone lock a pantry? He muttered. Morning. Cole turned. Marla stood in the doorway, wearing her robe, her hair messy from sleep. She looked softer like this, younger. It reminded him of why he'd married her in the first place. Those late-night conversations after his first wife's death. The way Marla had seemed to understand his grief, the promise of starting fresh. Morning, he said. When did we put a lock on the pantry? Marla moved past him to pour coffee. Last week. Lila was getting into things. Making messes. She's 9. Exactly. Marla sipped her coffee and leaned against the counter. 9-year-olds need boundaries. Structure. Her father never gave her any discipline, and now I have to undo all that damage. Cole studied his wife's face. She met his eyes without flinching, her expression open and reasonable. Seems extreme, he said. You don't have children, Cole. Marla's voice carried a hint of condescension. You don't understand how manipulative they can be. Especially girls. Especially girls who've been through trauma. What kind of trauma? Marla set down her mug with a sharp click. We've talked about this. Her father was abusive. A drunk. I got us out, but she's still damaged. She needs firm boundaries or she'll spiral. Cole nodded slowly, but something in his gut twisted. Marla's words made sense on the surface. They were logical and delivered with the confidence of someone who knew what she was talking about. But they didn't match what he'd seen last night. That wasn't manipulation under the table. That was terror. I'm going to check on her before I leave for work, Cole said. Marla's smile tightened. She's sleeping. Don't wake her. But Cole was already walking down the hall. He opened Lila's door as quietly as he could. The girl was curled under her blankets, only the top of her blonde head visible. The room smelled faintly of lavender, probably from whatever detergent Marla used. Cole stepped inside and noticed something he'd missed the night before. The closet door was closed, but there was a small bolt lock on the outside, the kind you'd use to keep a dog from getting into a room. His hands clenched into fists. He turned and walked back to the kitchen. Marla was making eggs now, humming something under her breath. Why is there a lock on Lila's closet? Cole asked. Marla didn't turn around. Timeouts. When she has tantrums, I put her in there to calm down. It's a parenting technique. Perfectly normal. Locking a child in a closet is not normal. You wouldn't understand. Marla's voice sharpened. You never had to deal with a disturbed child? I'm doing what I have to do to keep her safe. From herself. Cole opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He learned long ago that some battles couldn't be won with words. Instead, he grabbed his keys and walked out the door. But as he drove to the Henderson job site, he couldn't shake the image of that bolt lock, or the way Lila had whispered her apologies to no one. That night, Cole came home covered in sawdust. The Henderson deck was taking shape, and the physical labor usually cleared his head. But today it hadn't helped. Dinner was quiet again. Lila ate 3 bites of spaghetti, each one preceded by a glance at Marla for permission. Cole watched the interaction with growing unease. "How was school?" he asked Lila. The girl's fork froze halfway to her mouth. She looked at Marla. "Answer him," Marla said sweetly. "Cole asked you a question." "It was fine," Lila whispered. "Fine how?" Cole pressed. "Just fine." Marla laughed. "See? This is what I deal with. Getting information out of her is impossible. She shuts down." Cole set down his fork. Maybe she shuts down because she's afraid. The air in the room changed. Marla's smile vanished. "Afraid of what, exactly?" Her voice was ice. "I didn't say afraid of what. I just said afraid." "Are you implying something, Cole?" "I'm observing." Marla stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. "Lila, go to your room." The girl moved like lightning, abandoning her half-eaten dinner and disappearing down the hall. A door closed softly. Marla turned to Cole, and for a moment, he saw something flicker across her face, something raw and ugly that she quickly smoothed over. "I'm doing the best I can," she said, her voice trembling with barely controlled anger. "I'm trying to raise a damaged child while working full-time shifts at the hospital. And now my husband, who has no experience with children, is questioning my parenting." "I'm not questioning your parenting. I'm questioning the locks." "You want to know about the locks?" "Fine." She steals food and hides it in her room. It rots. It attracts ants. The lock keeps her from binging at night. It's for her own good. Then why does she ask permission to eat at dinner? Marla's jaw clenched. Because she needs structure. Routine. She can't be trusted to regulate herself. Her father destroyed any sense of discipline she had. Cole stood and took his plate to the sink. He rinsed it slowly, his back to Marla, using the mundane task to control his temper. When he'd been deployed, he learned to compartmentalize, to observe, to wait for the right moment. This wasn't the right moment. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay." Marla repeated, surprised. "Okay, you know better than I do." He saw her shoulders relax. She moved to him and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her cheek against his back. "Thank you," she murmured. "I know this is hard, but we're a team, right? We're helping her together." "Right," Cole said. But that night, after Marla fell asleep, Cole lay awake staring at the ceiling. Around 2 in the morning, he heard it, a soft sound through the vent that connected their bedroom to Lila's room. Crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, hopeless sobbing. Cole slipped out of bed and crept down the hall. He pressed his ear to Lila's door. "I'm sorry," the girl was whispering. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry I made you leave. I'm sorry I'm bad. I'll be better. I promise." The words were rhythmic, practiced, like a prayer she'd said 1,000 times. Cole's hands curled into fists at his sides. He stood there for 10 minutes, listening to a 9-year-old girl apologize to ghosts, and something cold and hard settled in his chest. He'd seen this before. In Fallujah, in Helmand Province. The way people acted when they'd been broken down systematically. When fear became their default state. Lila wasn't recovering from trauma. She was living in it. Cole pulled his truck into the parking lot of Meadowbrook Elementary and killed the engine. The building was single-story brick, surrounded by playgrounds and portable classrooms. Kids ran around the jungle gym, their shouts carrying across the asphalt. He called ahead, telling the office he needed to speak with Lila's teacher about her progress. Marla thought he was at a lumber yard pricing materials. The receptionist directed him to room 14. He found Ms. Gentry at her desk, grading papers during lunch break. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a bun and glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. "Mr. Hargrove?" She stood and shook his hand. "Thanks for coming in. I'm glad you called. Thanks for seeing me on short notice." Ms. Gentry gestured to a small table at the back of the classroom, the kind designed for parent-teacher conferences. They sat in child-sized chairs that made Cole's knees nearly touch his chest. "How is Lila doing?" Cole asked. "At home, she's very quiet." Ms. Gentry folded her hands on the table. Her expression was careful, measured. "Can I be frank with you? Please. Lila is one of the most concerning students I've had in 20 years of teaching." Cole's jaw tightened. How so? She's bright. Very bright. But she's also completely withdrawn. She doesn't play with other children. She doesn't participate in class unless directly called on. And Ms. Gentry paused, choosing her words carefully. She has some behaviors that worry me. What kind of behaviors? The teacher pulled out a folder and opened it. Inside were drawings. Child's drawings in crayon and pencil. Cole looked at the first one. It showed a stick figure girl inside a box. The box was color black. Above it, another figure with wild hair reached down with oversized hands. These are concerning, Ms. Gentry said quietly. When I asked her about them, she says she's drawing time out. Cole's throat felt tight. What else? She eats like she's starving during lunch. She'll finish her own meal in minutes, then ask if she can have leftovers from other kids. Sometimes she hides food in her backpack. Ms. Gentry met his eyes. We've reported this before, Mr. Hargrove. To your wife. She said Lila has an eating disorder, that she's being treated for it. Is she? I don't know. I teach her class. I'm not privy to her medical information. Cole picked up another drawing. This one showed a stick figure with yellow hair lying down. Red marks covered the figure's arms and legs. When did you report your concerns? Cole asked. 3 times. Once last year, twice this year. Each time, Mrs. Hargrove assured us she was handling it. That Lila's issues stem from her biological father's abuse. That she's in therapy. Is she in therapy? Ms. Gentry spread her hands. You'd have to ask your wife. But I will say this. In my experience, children who are healing from trauma start to open up over time. They start to trust. Lila is getting worse, not better. Cole stared at the drawings spread across the table. Black boxes, red marks, stick figures with no faces. Thank you for being honest, he said. Ms. Gentry reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. Mr. Hargrove, I'm telling you this because I can see you care. But I need you to understand, we're limited in what we can do. We've made our reports. CPS came out twice and found nothing conclusive. Without evidence of active abuse or neglect, our hands are tied. Cole nodded and stood. I understand. But as he drove away from the school, his hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they formed made his blood run cold. That evening, Cole didn't confront Marla. Instead, he did what he'd learned to do in hostile territory. He observed and waited. At dinner, he watched Lila ask permission before drinking her water. He watched Marla smile and grant it with a magnanimous nod, as if she were bestowing a gift. After dinner, he offered to do dishes. Marla kissed his cheek and went to take a bath. Cole heard the water running, heard the bathroom door close. He moved quickly and quietly to their bedroom. Marla's phone sat on the nightstand, charging. Cole unplugged it and entered her passcode, their wedding anniversary. She'd never changed it. He opened her messages and scrolled through. Most were mundane, coworkers, grocery lists, appointment reminders. Then he found a thread with a contact labeled Only T. Cole's pulse quickened as he read through the messages. Most were from months ago, but there were a few recent ones. T. She's starting to talk again at school. You need to handle this. Marla. I told you she'd ruin everything. I'm doing what I can. T. Do more. If anyone finds out what really happened, we're both done. Marla. Stop texting me. I have a husband now. This needs to stay buried. T. Buried like Tanner? The last message was from 3 weeks ago. After that, silence. Cole's mind raced. Tanner Royce, Lila's biological father. Marla had told Cole he died of an overdose a month before they met. She'd shown him the death certificate, told him the tragic story of trying to save a man who didn't want to be saved. But these messages suggested something else entirely. The bathroom door opened. Cole quickly closed the phone, plugged it back in, and moved to the closet. He pretended to be sorting through his work clothes when Marla appeared in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. Everything okay? She asked. Fine. Just looking for my good flannel. Got a client meeting tomorrow. Marla smiled and climbed into bed. Come here. I feel like we've been distant lately. Cole turned off the closet light and joined her. She curled against his chest, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm. I'm sorry I snapped at you about Lila, she murmured. You're just trying to help. I know that. It's okay. It's not. You're a good man, Cole. The best thing that ever happened to us. She tilted her head up to kiss him. I don't want to lose you. Cole kissed her back, his hand resting on her waist. But inside, his mind was calculating. The messages, the school reports, the locks, the fear in Lila's eyes. And now this. A suggestion that Tanner Royce's death wasn't as straightforward as Marla had claimed. You won't lose me, Cole said quietly. Marla sighed and settled against him. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Cole lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his first wife, Emma, who died in a car accident 5 years ago. He'd been overseas when it happened, unable to say goodbye. The guilt had nearly destroyed him. When he'd met Marla, she'd seemed like a second chance. A ready-made family. A way to fill the hollowness Emma's death had left behind. But now he wondered if he'd been so desperate for redemption that he'd married a woman without truly knowing her. His phone was in his workshop. Tomorrow, he'd make some calls. He'd get Tanner Royce's death certificate, the real one, not the copy Marla had shown him. He'd find out who T was, and he'd figure out exactly what Marla had done. Because Cole Hargrove had learned one thing in the Marines that had never left him. When you suspected the enemy was among you, you didn't confront them. You gathered intelligence. You built a case. And then you struck with overwhelming force. Cole sat in his truck outside the Douglas County Records office, engine idling, watching rain streak down the windshield. He told Marla he was meeting with a potential client in Roseburg. Not technically a lie, since he had stopped by Henderson's place on the way. But the real reason for the 2-hour drive was sitting in a manila envelope on the passenger seat. Tanner Royce's death certificate. The official one. Cole opened the envelope and pulled out the document. His eyes scanned the details. Date of death, September 14th, 2022. Cause, acute fentanyl toxicity. Location, 2847 Pine Ridge Road, Eugene, Oregon. Cole's jaw clenched. He'd met Marla on September 20th, 2022. She told him Tanner died in August, a full month before they met. She'd said she was past the worst of her grief, ready to start fresh. But according to this document, Tanner had been dead only 6 days when Cole first saw Marla at that coffee shop in downtown Eugene. 6 days. And the address, Pine Ridge Road. Cole pulled out his phone and typed it into the map. The location popped up, a small rental house on the outskirts of Eugene, backing up to Willamette National Forest. Not an apartment in Portland, like Marla had claimed. Cole's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He started the engine and headed north toward Eugene. The drive took 40 minutes through winding mountain roads, the rain never letting up. The house at 2847 Pine Ridge Road was barely standing. Faded blue paint peeled from the siding. The porch sagged in the middle. A for rent sign tilted in the overgrown yard. Cole parked across the street and studied the place. No cars in the driveway. No lights in the windows. He grabbed his raincoat and walked to the front door. No one answered his knock. He tried knob locked. Cole walked around back, checking windows. Most were too dirty to see through, but one at the rear of the house was cracked open slightly, probably broken. Cole glanced around. The nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile down the road, their view blocked by trees. He pushed the window up and climbed through. The house smelled of mold and abandonment. Cole clicked on his flashlight and swept the beam across the space. Empty except for trash, beer cans, fast food wrappers, cigarette butts. Squatters had been through here. He moved through the rooms methodically. Kitchen, empty cabinets, rust-stained sink. Living room, stained carpet, holes in the drywall. Bathroom, cracked toilet, shower curtain torn down. The bedroom was at the end of a narrow hall. Cole pushed the door open and stopped. The room wasn't empty. Someone had spray-painted words across the wall in black letters. Justice for Tanner. Below it, in smaller letters, they killed him. Cole's pulse kicked up. He pulled out his phone and took pictures, the flash illuminating the graffiti in stark bursts of light. Who was they? He searched the rest of the room, pulling out drawers, checking the closet. Nothing. Whoever had lived here was long gone. Cole was about to leave when he noticed something, a loose board in the closet floor. He knelt and pried it up. Underneath was a small space, and inside that space was a shoebox. Cole pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Tanner and Marla, looking young and happy. Tanner holding baby Lila. Marla pregnant, laughing at the camera. But beneath the happy photos were others. Marla and an older man Cole didn't recognize, their heads close together in what looked like a restaurant booth. Marla and the same man in a car. Timestamps in the corners showed the dates. July 2022, August 2022, 2 months before Tanner died. At the bottom of the box was a torn piece of notebook paper. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Marla and that insurance guy set this up. They want the money. Don't let them get away with it. It wasn't signed, but Cole knew it had to be Tanner's handwriting. Cole stared at the note for a long moment. Then he carefully repacked the box, climbed back out the window, and drove home. The next day, Cole installed a camera in the kitchen. It was small, no bigger than a button, and he positioned it inside the decorative basket that held Marla's cookbooks. The angle gave a clear view of most of the room, including the table and the pantry door. He felt no guilt about it. This wasn't about trust anymore. This was about evidence. That evening, Marla worked a late shift. Cole picked up Lila from school, something Marla usually did. The girl sat in the passenger seat of his truck, her backpack clutched in her lap, staring straight ahead. "How was school?" Cole asked. "Fine. Did you eat lunch?" A pause. "Yes." Cole glanced at her. Lila's fingers gripped the backpack straps so hard her knuckles were white. "Lila," he said quietly, "you can talk to me. You know that, right?" The girl didn't respond. But Cole saw her chest rise and fall faster, her breathing quickening. "I'm not going to hurt you," Cole said. "And I'm not going to let anyone else hurt you either." Lila's head turned slightly. For the first time, she looked at him, really looked at him. Her blue eyes were huge in her small face, searching his expression for something. Truth, maybe, or safety. "Promise?" she whispered. "Promise." Lila nodded once, then turned back to the windshield. But Cole noticed her grip on the backpack loosened just a fraction. When they got home, he made her a snack, peanut butter crackers and apple slices. Lila sat at the kitchen table and ate slowly, methodically, her eyes never leaving her plate. Cole sat across from her and pretended to look at his phone. But he was watching, observing, noting the way she counted each cracker before eating it, the way she lined up the apple slices in order of size. This was a child who'd learned that structure and order meant survival. "Do you like living here?" Cole asked. Lila's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "I'm supposed to be grateful." "That's not what I asked." The girl set down her cracker. "Mommy says you saved us. She says I need to be good so you don't send us away." Cole's chest tightened. "I'm not going to send you away, Lila. That's what Daddy said too. But I was bad and he left." "Your daddy didn't leave because of you." Lila looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Mommy said he did. She said he couldn't stand me anymore, that I drove him crazy." Cole's hands clenched into fists under the table. He forced his voice to stay calm. "That's not true. Your daddy got sick. It wasn't your fault. Mommy said—" "I don't care what Mommy said." Cole leaned forward. "Listen to me, Lila. You didn't do anything wrong. You hear me? Nothing." A tear slid down Lila's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, glancing toward the hallway as if expecting Marla to appear. "Don't tell Mommy I cried," she whispered. "Please." "I won't. If she finds out, I'll have to go in the closet again." Cole's vision went red for a moment. He breathed through his nose, forcing down the rage. "How often does that happen?" Lila shrugged. "When I'm bad." "What does bad mean?" "Crying. Talking back. Eating without asking. Making messes." The girl recited the list like she'd memorized it. "Talking about Daddy. Telling people things." "What things?" Lila's mouth opened, then closed. She shook her head frantically. I can't tell." She said bad things would happen if I tell." "Okay." Cole kept his voice gentle. "You don't have to tell me now, but I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm going to make sure you're safe. Can you trust me on that?" Lila studied him for a long moment. Then she gave the smallest nod. "Good. Now, finish your snack." That night, Cole reviewed the camera footage on his laptop while Marla slept. Most of it was mundane. Marla making dinner, cleaning up, moving around the kitchen. But then, around 3 in the afternoon, Lila appeared. The girl looked around nervously, then opened the pantry door, the unlocked outer door. She grabbed a box of crackers from the lower shelf and was about to close it when Marla's voice rang out. "What do you think you're doing?" Lila spun around, the cracker box clutched to her chest. "I was hungry. You had lunch. But I'm still hungry." Marla crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. She grabbed Lila's wrist, hard enough that the girl gasped, and yanked the crackers away. "You eat when I say you can eat," Marla hissed. "Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mommy." "Do you want to end up fat and disgusting like your father? Is that what you want?" "No, Mommy." Marla's face was inches from Lila's. "You think crying will make Cole believe you? You think if you tell him lies, he'll take your side?" She laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Go ahead. Try it. See where that gets you." Lila was sobbing now, her thin frame shaking. "Stop crying," Marla snapped. "God, you're pathetic. Just like Tanner. Weak. Useless. I don't know why I even bother with you." She shoved Lila toward the hallway. "Get out of my sight. And if I catch you stealing food again, you'll spend the whole night in the closet. Understand?" "Yes, Mommy," Lila choked out and fled. Cole watched the footage twice more, his face expressionless. Then he created a backup copy on an external drive and another on a secure cloud server. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Marla was still asleep in their bed, her breathing peaceful and even. She had no idea he'd seen this. No idea he was building a case against her. Good. Let her think everything was fine. Let her think he was the devoted husband who believed every lie she fed him. Because Cole Hargrove was done pretending. SC. Over the next 2 weeks, Cole moved with calculated precision. Every action was deliberate. Every conversation was staged. He installed 2 more cameras, one in the hallway near Lila's room, one in their bedroom. He bought a voice-activated recorder and hid it in the living room bookshelf. He documented everything. The locked pantry, the bolt on Lila's closet, the way Marla withheld food and affection as punishment. He acted normal, affectionate, even. He kissed Marla goodbye in the mornings, held her at night, made love to her when she initiated. He complimented her cooking, asked about her shifts at the hospital, played the role of devoted husband. And all the while, he gathered evidence. He contacted a lawyer, not in their town, but in Portland, 2 hours away. He paid cash for the consultation. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Chun, reviewed his documentation and gave him a grim assessment. "This is strong," she said, tapping the folder. "But you need more. Documented incidents, medical records if you can get them, testimony from the school. And you need to be careful. If she suspects you're building a case, she could destroy evidence. Or worse." "Worse how?" Victoria looked at him seriously. "Mr. Hargrove, if your wife is capable of what you're suggesting, systematic abuse, possible involvement in her ex-husband's death, then she's capable of doing whatever it takes to protect herself. That might include harming you or the child." Cole's jaw tightened. "I won't let that happen. Make sure you don't." Cole also started spending time with Officer Rhea Mendez. She worked school security part-time and had noticed Lila's behavior. She was in her early 30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that reminded Cole of his old commanding officer. They met for coffee under the pretense of discussing a neighborhood watch program Cole wanted to start. "Let me be straight with you," Rhea said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "I've been watching that little girl for months. Something's off." "What makes you say that?" "She doesn't play. She doesn't laugh. She sits by herself at recess and barely eats. When other kids get too close, she flinches." Rhea met his eyes. "I've seen abused kids before, Cole. That's what I'm looking at. The schools reported it. I know. I encouraged Ms. Gentry to file those reports. But CPS visited and didn't find enough evidence to remove her from the home. Your wife is smart. She knows how to present well. And Lila's too scared to talk." Cole nodded slowly. "If I had evidence, solid evidence, what would happen? Depends on what kind of evidence. Photos? Video? Medical documentation?" Rhea leaned forward. "Why? What do you have?" Cole told her. Not everything, but enough. He showed her some of the camera footage on his phone. The incident in the kitchen, Marla grabbing Lila's wrist, the verbal abuse. Rhea watched in silence, her expression hardening with each passing second. When it was over, she set down her coffee cup carefully. That's assault and child abuse, she said quietly. With this footage, we could get her arrested today. Not yet. Why not? Because I need to know what else she's done. Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. She's hiding something bigger. Something about her ex-husband's death. I need to know what that is before I move. Rhea studied him. You're planning something. I'm planning to protect that little girl. And make sure Marla never hurts anyone again. Cole. Rhea's tone was cautious. Be careful. Don't do anything that'll land you in jail instead of her. I won't. But even as he said it, Cole knew he'd do whatever was necessary. He'd crossed lines in combat that most people couldn't imagine. He'd made choices that still haunted him in the dark hours before dawn. This was different. This was personal. And this time, the enemy was sleeping in his bed. Cole hired a private investigator named Marcus Chun to look into the insurance angle. Marcus was retired FBI, recommended by Victoria. He was methodical and discreet. Your wife's ex-husband, Tanner Royce, had a life insurance policy worth $200,000. Marcus reported 2 weeks later. Beneficiary was changed 6 months before his death. Originally, it was split between Marla and Lila. Got changed to Marla only. Who authorized the change? Supposedly Tanner did. But look at this. Marcus slid a document across the table. This is the signature on the change form. And this is Tanner's signature from his driver's license renewal a year earlier. Cole compared them. They weren't even close. Forgery, he said. That's my assessment. But proving it's another matter. The insurance company didn't flag it at the time. Did they pay out? Eventually. Took 8 months. There was some question about the cause of death, whether it was accidental or intentional overdose. Suicide voids most policies. But the medical examiner ruled it accidental, so they paid. Cole's mind raced. Who was the medical examiner? Marcus flipped through his notes. Dr. Theodore Walsh. He's since retired. Lives in Bend now. I need to talk to him. I'll get you his contact info. But Cole. Marcus's expression was serious. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal. Because if you cross a line, everything you've gathered becomes inadmissible. And Marla walks. I understand. But Cole's definition of legal had been shaped by years of operating in gray zones where rules were suggestions and survival was the only law that mattered. He'd play by the rules. Until the rules got in his way. It happened on a Friday night in late October. Cole came home from work to find Marla's car already in the driveway. That was unusual. She typically worked until 8 on Fridays. He walked in through the garage and heard shouting from the kitchen. I don't care if you're hungry. You wait until I say you can eat. Cole moved quickly down the hall. The kitchen was a disaster. A box of cereal had spilled across the floor. Milk pooled on the tile. And in the center of it all, Lila cowered against the cabinets while Marla loomed over her. Look at this mess. Marla's voice was shrill, slightly slurred. You're disgusting. Just like your father. That's when Cole smelled it. Vodka. Marla was drunk. I'm sorry, Lila sobbed. I'm sorry, Mommy. I just wanted... The slap echoed through the kitchen. Lila's head snapped to the side, and she crumpled to the floor. Cole moved before he consciously decided to. He was across the kitchen in 2 strides, putting himself between Marla and the girl. Get away from her, he said quietly. Marla blinked at him, her eyes unfocused. Cole, I didn't hear you come in. Lila made a mess. She needs to. You just hit a 9-year-old child. I was disciplining her. Marla's words slurred slightly. She was stealing food again. She needs to learn. You just made your last mistake. Something in Cole's tone cut through Marla's drunken haze. She straightened, her eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're done hurting her. Marla laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Done? You think you can tell me how to raise my daughter? You're not even her real father. She stepped closer, swaying slightly. What are you going to do, Cole? Leave me? Divorce me? Go ahead. Try it. Nobody would believe you. You're the stepdad. You're nothing. Cole's face remained expressionless. He'd been called worse by better people. Words didn't touch him anymore. But Marla was just getting started. You know what everyone will think. She poked his chest with one finger. They'll think you're the abusive one. That you came in here with your military PTSD and your control issues, and you hurt us. That poor Marla and her traumatized daughter, trapped with a violent man. She smiled, and it was the coldest thing Cole had ever seen. So go ahead. Call the cops. File for divorce. I'll destroy you. I'll take everything. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never met me. Cole looked down at her, his expression still calm. Then he said, very quietly, "You're right. They won't believe me yet." The word "yet" hung in the air between them. Marla's smile faltered. What does that mean? But Cole had already turned away. He crouched down beside Lila, who was still huddled against the cabinets, holding her cheek where Marla had struck her. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you cleaned up." He lifted the girl easily. She weighed almost nothing, and carried her out of the kitchen. Behind him, he heard Marla shouting, but he didn't listen. He took Lila to his workshop and set her down in his office chair. "Let me see," he said. Lila lowered her hand. A red mark bloomed across her left cheek, already beginning to darken into a bruise. Cole took out his phone and photographed it from multiple angles, making sure the timestamp was visible. "Does it hurt?" he asked. Lila nodded, tears streaming down her face. Cole went to his workbench and came back with a first aid kit. He gave her an ice pack wrapped in a clean towel. "Hold this against your cheek." While she did that, Cole pulled out his laptop. He opened his encrypted files and began composing emails. The first went to Officer Ria Mendez, with video attachments of tonight's incident, captured perfectly by the kitchen camera. The second went to Child Protective Services, with copies of all the footage he'd gathered, the medical reports from Lila's school, and Ms. Gentry's documented concerns. The third went to the district attorney's office, with the insurance investigation documents and the forged signature on the beneficiary change form. The fourth went to the Oregon State Board of Nursing, with evidence that Marla had been drinking on the job and abusing prescription access. He sent them all simultaneously. Then he sat back and looked at Lila. "Do you trust me?" he asked. The girl nodded slowly. "Good, because tomorrow, things are going to change. Your mommy is going to have to go away for a while. Do you understand?" Lila's eyes widened. "Where?" "Jail, probably. Because what she did to you is wrong. And people who hurt children have to face consequences." "What about me?" Cole reached out and put his hand on her shoulder. The first time he'd really touched her except to move her out of harm's way. She didn't flinch. "You're staying with me. I'm going to make sure you're safe. That's a promise." Lila stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and wrapped her thin arms around his waist, pressing her face against his chest. She didn't say anything, just held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had been nothing but chaos and pain. Cole put his arms around her and held her while she cried. From the house, he could hear Marla still shouting, but her voice was getting farther away, fading into meaninglessness. Because Cole Hargrove had just launched an operation with military precision. And by tomorrow morning, Marla's perfect mask would be shattered beyond repair. The police arrived at 6:30 in the morning. Cole was awake when the first car pulled into the driveway, its lights painting the bedroom walls red and blue. He'd been sitting in the living room since 4, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise through the window. Marla was still asleep upstairs. She'd finally passed out around midnight, her angry shouts giving way to drunken unconsciousness. Cole opened the door before they could knock. Officer Ria Mendez stood on the porch flanked by 2 other officers Cole didn't recognize. "Mr. Hargrove," Ria said formally, "we have a warrant for Marla Hargrove's arrest. Is she home?" "Upstairs. Bedroom at the end of the hall." Ria nodded to the other officers, who moved past Cole into the house. He stepped aside and watched them climb the stairs. "You sent everything," Ria said quietly, staying on the porch with Cole. "CPS, the DA, the nursing board. You didn't hold anything back. No point in half measures. The DA's office already filed charges. Child abuse, fraud, forgery, insurance fraud." Ria paused. "They're also reopening Tanner Royce's death investigation." Cole's expression didn't change. "Good." From upstairs came the sound of shouting. Marla's voice, high and furious. "What is this? You can't just Cole. Cole, tell them they've made a mistake." Cole didn't move. He stood on the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the morning light filter through the pine trees. 2 officers brought Marla down the stairs. She was in her pajamas, hands cuffed behind her back, her hair wild. When she saw Cole standing calmly by the door, something in her face changed, shock giving way to understanding, then to pure rage. "You did this," she hissed. "You set me up." "No," Cole said quietly. "I documented what you did. There's a difference. You bastard. You have no idea what you've done. I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never see Lila again. I'll tell them you abused her. That you. Save it." Rhea cut her off. "We've seen the footage, Mrs. Hargrove. Multiple videos, multiple incidents. Dates, timestamps, everything. You're done." Marla's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The officers led her to the patrol car and put her in the back. She stared at Cole through the window, her face twisted with hatred. Cole stared back, his expression as calm as still water. The car pulled away. Rhea turned to Cole. "CPS is sending someone to interview Lila. They'll probably place her in your custody temporarily since you're her legal stepfather and the evidence shows you've been trying to protect her. But there'll be a formal hearing. Understand?" "And Cole," Rhea's voice softened slightly, "what you did, gathering all that evidence, documenting everything, that took guts. But it also took restraint. A lot of men in your position would have handled this differently." Cole met her eyes. "I did what needed to be done. Just make sure you keep doing it the right way. Because Marla's lawyer is going to come at you hard. They'll try to paint you as controlling, abusive, manipulative. Anything to shift the narrative. Let them try." Rhea nodded and headed back to her car. As she drove away, Cole turned and went inside. Lila was sitting on the stairs, still in her pajamas. She'd heard everything. Her blue eyes were huge, tracking Cole's movements as he approached. "Is Mommy coming back?" she whispered. "Not for a long time. Did I make this happen? Because I told you things?" Cole sat down on the step below her, so they were at eye level. "Listen to me, Lila. None of this is your fault. What your mother did was wrong. What she did to you was wrong. You didn't cause it, and you didn't deserve it. Understand?" Lila's chin trembled. "But she's my mommy. I know, and I'm sorry. But sometimes people we love hurt us, and when that happens, there have to be consequences. That's what's happening now. What's going to happen to me? You're staying here, with me. Nobody's taking you away, and nobody's hurting you again. That's a promise." Lila studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded, and something in her expression shifted. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. "Okay," she whispered. Later that morning, CPS sent a social worker named Patricia Gomez. She was middle-aged, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. She spent 2 hours interviewing Cole and Lila separately, examining the house, reviewing the documentation Cole had provided. When she was done, she sat across from Cole at the kitchen table, the same table where Lila had once hidden underneath, terrified and apologizing for crimes she hadn't committed. "This is one of the most thoroughly documented abuse cases I've seen," Patricia said. "The video evidence alone is damning. Combined with the school reports, the medical examiner's concerns about Mr. Royce's death, and the financial fraud. Mrs. Hargrove is facing serious charges." "Good." Patricia's expression was carefully neutral. "I have to ask, Mr. Hargrove, why didn't you come forward sooner? Some of this footage goes back weeks." "Because I needed to be sure, and I needed enough evidence that she couldn't lie her way out of it. That's calculated. I was in the Marines. I learned how to plan operations. This was no different." Patricia nodded slowly. "Well, your planning worked. I'm recommending Lila be placed in your full custody pending the outcome of Mrs. Hargrove's trial. There'll be a formal hearing in 2 weeks, but based on what I've seen, I don't anticipate any issues." "Thank you, Mr. Hargrove." Patricia leaned forward. "Lila's been through severe trauma. She's going to need therapy probably for years. She's going to have nightmares, behavioral issues, trust problems. This isn't going to be easy. I didn't expect it to be. But you're still willing to take her on? Even though she's not biologically yours." Cole's jaw tightened. "She's a 9-year-old girl who's been hurt by the people who were supposed to protect her. If I walk away from that, what kind of man am I?" Patricia smiled, a real smile this time. "The right kind, I think." 2 days later, the police searched Marla's storage unit. They'd gotten a warrant based on the financial records Cole had provided, which showed monthly payments to a storage facility in Springfield. What they found was damning. documents related to Tanner Royce's life insurance policy, forged signatures, email printouts detailing Marla's affair with an insurance broker named Theodore Ted Walsh, the same Dr. Walsh who'd served as medical examiner on Tanner's case. There were also prescriptions in Tanner's name, opioids, anti-anxiety medications, written by Marla herself using her hospital access. Enough drugs to kill someone if administered improperly. And at the bottom of the file box, they found a handwritten letter from Ted Walsh to Marla. I took care of the Mia report. Accidental overdose, just like we discussed. No one will question it. As soon as the insurance pays out, we could be together. Just a little longer, baby. I promise. The letter was dated a week after Tanner's death. When Cole heard about the discovery, he was standing in his workshop, building a bookshelf for Lila's room. Rhea Mendez had called to give him the update. They're bringing Walsh in for questioning, Rhea said over the phone. Looks like he and Marla conspired to kill Tanner and cover it up. The insurance payout was the motive. Cole's hand stilled on the wood he was sanding. How'd they do it? Best guess. Marla drugged him. She had access to fentanyl through the hospital. Mixed it into his regular drugs, made it look like he overdosed accidentally. Walsh falsified the medical examiner's report to support that conclusion. And Lila probably saw something or knew something. That's why Marla was so desperate to keep her quiet. Rhea paused. This changes everything, Cole. Marla isn't just facing child abuse charges anymore. She's facing murder. Cole felt something cold and satisfied settle in his chest. Not pleasure exactly, more like the feeling of a mission accomplished. Good, he said quietly. The DA wants to talk to you. Probably bring you in to testify at the trial. Are you comfortable with that? Yes. And Lila, I'll do whatever I need to do to keep her out of that courtroom. She's been through enough. Agreed. Look, Cole, what you did, documenting everything, building this case, it's going to put Marla away for a long time. Maybe for life, if they can prove the murder charge. That's what she deserves. Yeah, Rhea said. It is. After they hung up, Cole stood in his workshop for a long time, staring at the half-finished bookshelf. Through the window, he could see Lila in the backyard, sitting on the grass and watching birds at the feeder he'd installed last week. She looked small, fragile, but she'd survived, and Cole Hargrove was going to make damn sure she kept surviving. The trial began in January. Cole sat in the courtroom every day, wearing one of his two good suits, watching as the prosecution systematically dismantled Marla's defense. The video footage played on large screens for the jury to see. Marla grabbing Lila, screaming at her, withholding food, threatening her. Marla's lawyer tried to spin it. He painted Cole as controlling, manipulative, a man with PTSD who'd installed secret cameras and manufactured evidence to frame his innocent wife. But the evidence was too strong. Ms. Gentry testified about Lila's behavior at school. Patricia Gomez testified about the conditions she'd found. Medical experts testified about Tanner Royce's death, highlighting inconsistencies in the original examiner's report. And Ted Walsh, facing his own charges, eventually broke and confessed to falsifying the medical examiner's report in exchange for a plea deal. Through it all, Marla sat at the defense table, her expression cold and blank. She didn't cry, didn't show remorse. She stared straight ahead, occasionally whispering to her lawyer, her jaw tight. On the fourth day of trial, the prosecution called Cole to the stand. He walked up, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Then he sat down and faced the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Park who'd been with the DA's office for 15 years. Mr. Hargrove, Jennifer began, can you tell the jury when you first suspected something was wrong with your stepdaughter? Cole described the dinner scene. Lila, hiding under the table, whispering apologies. He described the locks on the pantry and closet, the way Lila asked permission to eat, the fear in her eyes. What did you do when you noticed these things? Jennifer asked. I started paying closer attention, observing. And what did you observe? That my wife was systematically abusing a child. Marla's lawyer objected. The judge sustained it. Jennifer rephrased. What specific behaviors did you observe? Cole listed them calmly, methodically. The withholding of food, the verbal abuse, the physical violence. He testified about installing the cameras, about gathering evidence, about building a comprehensive case before going to the authorities. Why didn't you call the police immediately? Jennifer asked. Because I needed proof. Marla was smart. She'd convinced the school, CPS, everyone that Lila was the problem, that she had eating disorders, behavioral issues, trauma from her father. I knew if I called without evidence, Marla would lie, and everyone would believe her. So you built a case. Yes, like a military operation. Exactly like that. Jennifer pulled up the video of Marla slapping Lila. It played on the screens for the jury. Cole watched them flinch, watched the disgust cross their faces. What went through your mind when you saw this happen? Jennifer asked. Cole looked at Marla. She stared back, her expression unreadable. I thought, Cole said quietly, that I'd been sleeping next to a monster. On cross-examination, Marla's lawyer came at him hard. Mr. Hargrove, isn't it true you suffer from PTSD related to your military service? I've had treatment for trauma. Yes. And isn't it true you've had issues with anger management? No. Never lost your temper? Never gotten violent? Not since I left the service. But you installed secret cameras in your home. You spied on your wife. You gathered evidence against her without her knowledge. That's pretty controlling behavior, wouldn't you say? Cole's expression didn't change. I documented crimes being committed against a child. If that's controlling, then I'll own it. You admit you're controlling. I admit I took control of a situation where a child was being harmed. The lawyer shifted tactics. Mr. Hargrove, your first wife died while you were deployed, correct? Cole's hands tightened on the arms of the witness chair. Yes, that must have been devastating. It was, and you carry guilt about that, about not being there when she died. Objection, Jennifer said. Relevance. Your Honor, I'm establishing the witness's state of mind when he met the defendant. The judge nodded. I'll allow it. But get to the point, counselor. The lawyer turned back to Cole. So you met my client shortly after your wife's death. You were grieving, vulnerable. Isn't it possible you saw what you wanted to see? A ready-made family, a chance to play hero? No. And when that fantasy didn't match reality, you manufactured evidence to justify your disappointment? No. You expect this jury to believe. I expect this jury to watch the videos. Cole cut in, his voice hard. I expect them to listen to Lila's teachers, her doctors, the social workers. I expect them to look at the facts and see what's obvious, that your client is a child abuser and a murderer. Objection. Sustained. Mr. Hargrove, you'll stick to answering the questions asked. But the point was made. Cole saw it in the jury's faces. They weren't buying the defense's narrative. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. On the count of child abuse, guilty. On the count of assault, guilty. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of forgery, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Marla's face went white. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm, but she shook him off. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. As they led Marla out of the courtroom in handcuffs, she turned and looked at Cole one last time. Her expression was pure venom. Cole stared back, his face completely calm. Then Marla was gone. Cole stood and walked out of the courtroom. In the hallway, Patricia Gomez was waiting with Lila. The girl had been kept out of the trial, sheltered from the worst of the evidence. Is it over? Lila asked quietly. Yes, Cole said. What happens now? Now you come home, and we figure out what normal looks like. Lila nodded. Then, hesitantly, she reached out and took Cole's hand. Cole squeezed gently and led her toward the exit. The letter arrived 3 weeks after sentencing. Marla had been given 30 years, 20 for conspiracy to commit murder, 10 for the abuse charges, to be served consecutively. She'd be 65 years old before she was eligible for parole. Cole was in the workshop when the mailman knocked. He signed for the certified letter and recognized the law firm letterhead. Marla's lawyers. Inside was a single piece of paper, handwritten in Marla's neat script. Cole, by the time you read this, I'll be in prison. I'll probably die there. You won. You destroyed me, took my daughter, turned everyone against me. But here's something you should know, something I never told anyone. Tanner didn't overdose by accident. And Ted didn't give him the drugs. I did. I crushed up the pills and mixed them into his whiskey one night when he was already drunk and high. I sat there and watched him drink it. Watched him get sleepy, watched him stop breathing. It took 40 minutes. The whole time, Lila was asleep in the next room. Ted helped me cover it up afterward, but he didn't know I did it intentionally. He thought I'd just been careless with Tanner's medications. Even when he falsified the me report, he believed it was an accident. But it wasn't. I killed him, Cole, deliberately, because I was tired of being poor, tired of being married to a loser, tired of pretending. And you know what the funny part is? I almost got away with it. I had the money, the fresh start, the new husband. Everything was perfect until you started paying attention. So congratulations. You solved the mystery. You're the hero. But you'll never really know what I did to her father. You'll never know what Lila saw that night, what she remembers. You'll never know if she's damaged because of her father or because of what I did to him. Sleep well with that thought. Marla. At the bottom of the page, she'd written one more line. P.S. Tell Lila I loved her. In my own way. Cole read the letter twice. Then he walked to his workbench, pulled out his lighter, and set the paper on fire. He watched it burn in the metal trash can until nothing remained but ash. Then he went inside. That Saturday, Cole took Lila fishing. They drove an hour north to a lake he'd found online. Small, secluded, surrounded by mountains that reflected in the still water. Cole rented a small rowboat, and they paddled out to the middle of the lake. Lila had never fished before. Cole showed her how to bait the hook, how to cast, how to be patient. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, lines in the water, watching dragonflies skim the surface. Cole, Lila said quietly. Yeah. Thank you. For keeping me. Cole looked at her. In the months since Marla's arrest, Lila had started to change. She smiled sometimes, laughed occasionally. She'd gained weight, her cheeks filling out. She still had nightmares, still saw a therapist twice a week, still flinched at loud noises. But she was healing. You don't need to thank me, Cole said. I do, though. You didn't have to. I'm not even yours. Cole set down his fishing rod and turned to face her. Listen to me, Lila. You are mine. Not because of biology or marriage certificates or anything like that. You're mine because I choose it. Because I'm not going to let anyone hurt you again. Ever. Understand? Lila's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. Good. Now pay attention to your line. I think you've got something. Lila's rod bent. Her eyes widened, and she grabbed it with both hands. Together, they reeled in a small bass. Lila squealed with delight. The first time Cole had heard her make that sound. For the first time since this nightmare began, she looked like a normal 9-year-old girl. They fished until the sun started to set, painting the lake gold and orange. On the way back to shore, Lila said, I don't remember everything about my daddy, but I remember he used to sing to me at night. Cole glanced at her. What did he sing? You are my sunshine. The same song every night. Lila was quiet for a moment. Do you think he loved me? I think he did. I think he loved you the best he could. Mommy said he left because I was bad. Your mommy lied about a lot of things. Lila nodded slowly, processing that. I don't miss her. Is that bad? No, it's honest. They pulled the boat onto the shore and loaded the gear into the truck. As they drove home through the darkening forest, Cole glanced at Lila in the passenger seat. She was looking out the window, her expression peaceful for maybe the first time since he'd known her. Cole, she said without turning. Yeah. Nobody hurts me again. You promised. That's right. Do you keep your promises? Cole's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His reflection looked back at him from the rearview mirror. Calm, steady, dangerous in the way still water is dangerous when you can't see the depth. Always, he said, and somewhere deep inside, where he kept the parts of himself that had learned to kill without hesitation, Cole Hargrove made another promise, one he'd never say out loud. If anyone ever tried to hurt this girl again, they wouldn't just face justice. They'd face him, and there'd be no mercy, no forgiveness, no second chances, because some debts could only be paid one way. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as they drove home, and in the silence between them was a bond forged in fire, not of blood, but of choice, of protection, of a warrior who'd found someone worth fighting for. And that, Cole thought as Lila's breathing evened into sleep beside him, was worth more than any promise of forgiveness could ever be.